Hello, and welcome back to Queens of the Paddock, an F1 podcast. My name is
And
Alex,
I'm Courtney.
and today we are going to be talking about Crashgate. So
Woo!
I've got my Alonso hat on. He is one of the main participants in this situation.
Or this,
Um,
I guess, scandal.
Scandal, yes, it's a big scandal. So this is one of the biggest scandals in F1 and also in sports in general.
Ooh.
So we will dive into it. But we wanted to talk about this because recently it's kind of come back into the spotlight with Felipe Massa challenging the results from this race. Um, and we'll talk about that kind of in more detail. But so it's people have been talking about Crashgate, and we never really like when we mentioned this back when we were doing our Renault episode
Mm-hmm.
or Alpine episode. We didn't really like go into a lot of details about it. So
Yeah, yeah.
to just do a little deep dive,
True.
and um, then we'll be back on into races. So
So excited.
super exciting. We're a week out.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Cannot wait to get back to racing.
Yeah.
So,
And look for our pre Aja God.
as
Say it for.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
I love that word. Like there's something about that word that Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
I don't
So look
know.
for
I
that
like saying it.
episode to come out this week.
Yes, that'll be out. A lot of really interesting information in that one, so definitely go check that out.
Yeah.
So, should we start off? Wait, before we do that, I also want to mention real quickly the other rumor about Fernando Alonso that's going on
And T
right
Swift.
now and Taylor Swift. Yes, I kind of love this. Like,
I think
why
it,
do I want this to be true?
I think it'd be cool.
I think they would actually make a good couple because I feel like Taylor Swift is like more mature.
Yeah.
Like, imagine Taylor Swift in the paddock,
Oh, snap.
the outfits,
Oh, it'd be great.
the drama.
Oh,
I would love that. I would love that.
yeah. I think it would be fun. We'll see though.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully the
So,
public doesn't ruin it
yeah,
for them.
I know. I really don't think it's true, but I'm fingers are crossed. I'm
You're
hoping. I want to
manifesting.
manifest that too. Yeah, for sure. But okay, so let's start out talking about Crashgate. So this situation scandal happened in 2008. And it revolves around the Renault F1 team, which Renault is now today known as Alpine.
Yep. The French
So
team.
same team. Yes, the French team. And they had rejoined F1 back in 2000. So they ended up buying the Benetton team and they joined F1 in 2000. And then Fernando Alonso became a driver for them in 2003. So he had been kind of like their reserve test driver. And then in 2003, they promoted him to a full time driver. And then he started to do really well. So the team and Fernando won both the drivers' championship and the constructors' title in 2005 and 2006. And they were like dominating, like they were doing really well. They
Hmm.
were kind of at the forefront of everything that was going on. But then in 2007, F1 announced new um, regulations and like new just things to go by. And Fernando was like, I don't think that they're going to be ready for this. So Fernando quits and leaves
Okay.
and goes to McLaren because McLaren had been after him. I mean, was just coming off of winning 2 titles.
Hmm.
Um, and so they were trying to tell him, like, hey, like, we're going to be ready to go. Like, we're super at the forefront, whatever. You should come join us. So he leaves, goes over there. Renault is awful. Like they were not able to like they just were like on the like in the back, like not
Kind of like Williams.
um yeah, yeah, like they had been so good and then they just like fell right to the bottom, like not winning races, not doing anything. for that year in 2007. And then in 2008, Fernando leaves McLaren and comes back to Renault.
Okay.
So he's just like hopping around everywhere. Um, and at this point, Renault was really having issues because like they were trying to maintain their sponsorships, like trying to have enough money to stay in the sport, but they hadn't won a race
Mhm.
or I think even a podium since 2006. So they're going on like 2 years of just bad
Yeah.
results. So they were kind of hard pressed to turn it around or else they would be out of the sport. Like they were close to just closing it up and leaving.
Mhm.
So 2008, they've got Fernando, and then they also bring on Nelson Piquet Jr., which he is. We've talked about the
We
PKs.
have.
We're gonna be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so Nelson Piquet Jr. is Nelson Piquet's son,
Yeah.
and Nelson Piquet is the Brazilian driver. He's won three drivers championships in like the 80s. And he is the brother of Kelly
Yes.
Piquet, who is dating
Max.
Max. So we've got Nelson Piquet Jr., we've got Fernando Alonso, and they're still like the team is just like up to this point in the year, like they were not doing great. Like they hadn't podium, they hadn't won anything
Mhm.
also this year. So they're stressing out, they're struggling. And then we get to the Singapore Grand Prix, which that year it was in September 28th was the date in 2008, and it was the 15th race on the calendar. Can't talk.
Okay.
Um, and this is the first Singapore Grand Prix,
Oh,
and it was the first time that F1 had done a night race ever.
really?
So this was like, yeah, so this was like a big deal. Like, I mean, I would imagine too, the drivers are not used to driving at night and
Mhm.
all of that. So it was like totally new for them. Everyone's super excited. And at this point in the championship that year, Lewis was leading and Felipe Massa was in second place, but Lewis was leading only by a point.
Okay.
And Lewis was on McLaren at this point. Um, and so we know now, like Singapore being a street circuit. It's a really tight track. It's a very difficult track, and then on top of that, it's the first time they're doing a night race. So lots of stuff going on. Exciting weekend for everyone, really. So we can get started. Um, Renault, Fernando, and Nelson are like not doing great practice qualifying. Fernando had an issue in qualifying with his engine. So he ends up starting 15th and Nelson starts 16th
Oh,
on the grid. So they're like,
they're in the
this is
back.
also, again, not, yeah, they're in the back. Like, they're like, okay, great. Like, we're going to have another crappy weekend.
Mhm.
Great. And that's like exactly what they don't need at this point because they're already like struggling.
Yeah.
So the team decided to take what a lot of people thought was kind of a strange strategy with Fernando to begin with in this race. So this is at this point like in F1 they had to stop to refuel during races as well on top
Oh,
of
wow.
changing tires.
So when they refueled,
So
did they refuel like in pit lane or did they bring them into the garage?
yes.
Oh, wow.
No, in the pit lane. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the pit stops were longer because a lot of the times they're changing tires, then also refueling, and so it takes a little bit longer. But then also too, you had you could play around with the fuel
Mhm.
load as far as like part of your strategy,
Yeah.
because you knew you had to pit and either add more fuel or well add more fuel. So you could either start with a lighter load
Mhm.
to get like a quick start or you could start with a heavier load and then you wouldn't have to pit that quickly because you would have all this fuel to keep on going.
Mhm.
And then you can kind of play with that and trying to figure out the strategy of like, how do I make this work with the pit stops and the gas and the tires and all of that. So it just kind of added another um piece of
Yeah.
strategy in for them. So he starts out with a lighter fuel load, and this would have made like in the strategy and the way that people worked this, like it would have made sense for somebody in the front to start out with a lighter fuel load because you're wanting to get ahead of the pack quicker
Hmm.
and be faster because you have lighter fuel.
Hmm.
And then that way, when you do pit for more gas, all these other people are like further behind you
Okay.
because they've got these heavy fuel loads. So it wouldn't really have made sense for somebody in the back to start with a lighter fuel load because yeah, you're still going to be quicker than most people and you're going to have to pit sooner, but like you can make up spots, but then
Yeah.
you're having to pit sooner. So like you're just going to lose all of that advantage.
Yeah.
So everyone was kind of like that's weird, like I don't know. And two, for Fernando to be like kind of just going along with that strategy. I mean, he's a two-time at this point world drivers champion. Like you would think he would like
Question it.
be like, no, that's not a great move. But so okay, so he is still on top of, having the lighter fuel, whatever, still struggling like in the middle of the pack, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, so they bring him in to pit on lap 12. They give him more fuel
Okay.
and they change his tires. And then 2 laps after he's already pitted, and at this point, like with that pit stop, they gave him enough fuel. Like he could have gone to the end, like they changed his tires. He could have gone to the end on those. So he's done,
Hmm.
essentially, like with pit stops. And then 2 laps after he pits, Nelson Piquet crashes at the exit of turn 17, which on this track, that is an area where there's not like a able for like a crane to easily grab the car and take it off. Like they literally had to pull the safety car, like get all of that stuff going because it was not a good, like convenient spot,
Hmm.
I guess you could say, to be crashing.
Yeah.
So safety car comes out. Then also at this time, like the regulations were that once a safety car has to come out, all of the cars have to like bunch up behind the safety car
Hmm.
before anybody can go to the pit lane. So the pit lane's closed
Okay. Until they're like single file.
until yes, until everyone's in their order bunched up, which honestly like I should we bring that back? I kind of feel like I like that because then you get people like out of order because they're jumping into the pit lane.
I don't know.
Anyways,
Eh.
but so okay, so pit lane's closed. Everyone has to bunch up, and pretty much all of the other drivers that hadn't pit at this point are that's like a huge disadvantage for them.
Yeah.
So Fernando, having pitted already, he just basically like inherits the lead at this point because after that all happens, everyone bunches up behind the safety car. Finally, the pit lane opens, and then the whole of like everyone pretty much,
Mm.
except for Fernando and like two or three other drivers, go into the pit lane. And so now teams are trying to double stack people, and like
Hmm.
it's just chaos. Felipe Massa had like a major problem. I think the fuel, like whatever they stuck in,
Yeah.
like the gas pump or whatever, got stuck in his car, so he has a horrible pit stop. Anyways, it ruins like all these other people's races.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Fernando's just chilling. Like he's like,
Yeah.
now I'm in first,
Yeah.
and now I just got to finish this race and not mess anything up.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. Like he
So, but,
finishes the race and wins.
but here's the crazy thing with it though is that a lot. I mean, it goes back to like you were saying, like, well, why did they have a lighter like fuel tank? You know,
Right.
unless you knew
Right.
that something was going to
Right.
happen.
Something, unless if you had this plan. So at the time, like whenever this happens, Fernando wins. He makes a comment during an interview. He said that this was going to go down as a legendary race or something like that, like in history. And people are like, oh, well, he's talking about because it's the first night race and it's like
Yeah.
Singapore Grand Prix and whatever. So, like, people don't really take a whole lot of stock into that. But it's funny to hear that now. Um, but then also too, like there was some people that had like speculations and they were like, that's really strange. And also people started to point out during the warm-up lap
Mhm.
of the race, Nelson Piquet had like kind of spun out in that same exact area.
Mhm.
And so people were like, I don't know, maybe he had a problem in that spot, but then some people were like, maybe he was practicing
Yeah.
to like
Like,
potentially crash there
yeah.
or like to tell the team, like, is this where you want me to crash? Like, as like a test. But so basic, like, there was a lot of rumors going around. Even some of the other drivers on the grid at the time were like, this is suspicious. Like,
Mhm.
this team has been just awful. And then here they come out of nowhere winning this race. And like,
Mhm.
his teammate crashed. Like, I don't know. People thought it was weird, but then everyone pretty much dismissed the fact that,
It
like,
could be more than that.
this could even
Yeah.
happen. Yeah. Because people, at the end of the day, people were like, this is suspicious and it's weird, but nobody would purposely have their driver crash and potentially like injure themselves, injure spectators, injure people on the track, injure other drivers.
Mm,
Like, there's like, no, that's just too crazy. Like, nobody would ever do that.
but that's also, remember, who are we talking about? Aston Martin or something like that? And like, remember somebody made all that money off their stock recently?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's Aston Martin.
but I was like, you,
And Toto Wolff because he
yeah,
is I'm pretty sure a stock owner.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it,
He's got some stocks.
there's a lot of reasons why someone or a team would potentially do that. Like, yes,
Right.
you could injure yourself or whatever, but like, you never know. Like, there could be a bigger payout for it, that you don't
Yeah.
know.
Right. Well, and then too, don't forget, like, they were literally at the point of like, if they don't have any wins or anything,
Hmm.
podiums, nothing, like they're gonna have to pretty much shut down
Yeah.
because it was looking really bad for them.
Well, interesting. So what? So
So
what happens after this? Alonso gives his
okay,
like.
so after all of that, like essentially what ends up happening is it's just that that crash is considered at the time a simple mistake.
Mhm.
Nelson Piquet Jr. was a rookie. He says it was a simple mistake. The team is like, you know what? Like, we just got lucky. Like,
Mhm.
we got super lucky, even though he crashed. Like, we got lucky that we had sent Fernando to the pits, and then the safety car thing happens, and it was just a luck thing. So everyone just moves on, and they're like, okay, fine. It's fine.
Okay.
So the next year, um, oh, and wait, too, I forgot to mention. So after that race, Fernando then goes, the next race was Japan, and then Fernando Alonso won that race too. So after that kind of
Ooh.
happened, people were like, okay, well, maybe
You know,
the car like has enough pace and like
and a lot.
it wasn't just a fluke thing or like a weird
Yeah,
thing that
but also
happened.
Alonso had won two drivers' championships
Mhm.
before this, so it's like, again, maybe he's just like finally figuring the car out and putting him in a good place.
Right.
I mean, just like what he's doing right
Right.
now for Aston Martin. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
you never know. So,
Yeah. So everyone just pretty much like moves on. They're like, okay, well, that's done. Like, we're going to continue on with everything else that's going on.
okay.
So in 2009, Renault decided to keep Alonso and Nelson Piquet Jr. For that year.
Mhm.
But in the middle of the year, um, the like Nelson was just doing nothing. Like, he hadn't scored any points at all.
Mhm.
Um, after 10 rounds, Fernando Alonso had scored 13 points, so he wasn't doing great,
But
but at least
it's
he was like getting
something.
some points.
It's kind of like
Right.
Mick last year with um what's it?
Haas.
Yeah, with Haas, but also with Kevin.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
Kevin wasn't like
Yeah,
bringing in a
100%.
ton of points, but at the same time, it was more than what Mick had been doing. So
Right, 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 right. So the team decides to fire him
okay,
middle of the season,
ooh,
and they replace him with Roman Grosjean,
mhm,
who we know. Um,
yeah, the man that was on
so
walked on
after,
fire.
yes, the man on fire. So after that, Nelson Piquet Jr. decides to come out
Mhm.
and with his statement that the team had asked him to purposely crash during the Singapore Grand Prix. And at this point, it was almost a
No,
year. Yes. So it was basically like 10 months after that race had took place.
what?
So he gets fired, and then immediately he comes out and he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to
I'm
tell
I'm
everyone what
gonna
you made me
I'm
do.
gonna sink the ship. That's
Yeah,
literally what
he's
I'm
like,
gonna do.
okay, that's fine. You can fire me, but I'm gonna literally fire everyone
Yeah.
in this team. So he goes to the FIA and tells them, like, makes a statement that the team principal, which was Flavio Briatore
Mhm.
at the time, and the um, technical director, his name was Pat Simmons.
Mhm.
And so he says that both of them asked him to purposely crash, um, and they told him where to crash, and it was all planned out, and it was done in a way to help get an advantage for Alonso during this race. So the FIA is like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Like, not a good
No.
look. We can't have people like race fixing, doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So the FIA announces like they're going to be investigating this further. But they don't at this point, like they don't tell the public like what they're investigating. So they had just come out and said, and nobody public wise really at this point knew
Like what was
that
going?
Nelson
Yeah.
had made these statements. Right. So the FIA comes out and they say they're investigating alleged incidents at a previous F1 event. And then 5 days after that announcement comes out, Renault um, gets like formally accused of
Race. I
interfering
mean,
with the outcome
that's
of.
race fixing. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah. So the formal accusation was interfering with the outcome of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix and conspiracy involving Nelson Piquet Jr.
okay.
So at this point, everyone in F1 is like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy!" And then people start to go mad and like run around
Mhm.
causing a bunch of chaos because they're like, well, is everyone doing this? Like, are all of these teams like in cahoots with each other? Like, is this just like a fake sport? Like, blah,
Mhm.
blah, blah. And so, again, F1, the FIA is like, oh my gosh, we have to shut this down.
Mhm.
So they say, they're going to have like this council meeting and it's like the World Motorsport Council. Like, it was like a big deal. And so that meeting was set for the 21st of September in 2009. So it's again like almost a
Almost a
year
year. Yeah.
after, yes, this whole situation happened. Um, and so then Renault is like, all the media, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, like, what are you saying about this? And so they're declining to comment
Mhm.
and saying that the only comment that they have will be heard at this hearing. Like they don't want to come out and say yes or no. They're not making comments at all. Well, so in preparations for this hearing, they had to get statements from Nelson Piquet Jr. They
Mhm.
interviewed a bunch of team people from the team. Um, they get all these statements from all these people. And these statements that PK Jr. ends up making ended up getting leaked to the media. And
Before.
so, like, and now before this council meeting. And so then all the public, all the media gets all these details of like his whole story, which was essentially this Flavio and
Mhm.
Pat Simmons, like, told him to crash. They planned it all, blah, 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 whatever. So all of that gets leaked to the media. So the media is like having a field day.
Yeah.
Like, this is the craziest thing. Oh my gosh. Like, we can't believe it. And at that point, Renault charges or well sues or whatever. I don't know what they did. Like charged Nelson Piquet Jr. and Nelson Piquet Sr. with blackmailing. They're
What?
like saying that they're yes, like they said that they were making this whole story up and they were blackmailing the team um because he didn't want to be fired essentially. They were like,
What?
"Well, he's only coming out with us now because we fired him and he was trying to blackmail us." And so they were saying like that before they fired him,
This was all
he
going
was
on.
saying like right. Yes,
What?
and that he had been blackmailing them. And so then they decided to fire him and now he came out with all of this stuff. So they literally sue him in a Paris like French court
Mhm.
like officially. And this is all before any of this like motorsport council
Meeting.
situation happens.
Mhm.
Right. So now he's being sued. Now they're like, we're gonna take legal action, whatnot, whatever. Um, on September 16th, like several days before that actual hearing, they Renault
Mhm.
releases a different statement now saying, so this is after they've already said they're gonna sue the PKs and for blackmailing and all of that. So they released another statement saying that they were not going to dispute the allegations made by FIA and the managing director. And their team principal, Flavio Briatore, and the director of engineering, Pat Simmons, had left the team.
Oh,
So
okay.
now they're saying, like,
Oh,
well, we're not going to dispute this.
we're just gonna clean house.
And right. And so these two main people are leaving the team. And then they go through to this hearing. They listen to all of the statements, evidence, whatnot,
Mhm.
all these, like the team people that they had interviewed. They didn't name the people that they had gotten statements from outside of PK Jr.
Mhm.
And so they were basically like witness X, witness Y, like
Mhm.
whatever, all of that. So the FIA finds like this definitely happened.
Yeah.
Like Nelson PK Jr. is not making this up. So they give Renault a suspended 2-year ban,
Okay.
which essentially means like if they didn't do anything for the next 2 years to get them in trouble, like they're basically like on probation.
Okay. Okay.
So they were on probation for 2 years. Like if they didn't do anything bad during that time period, nothing would happen to them.
Nothing.
So they don't get really any like repercussions
That's
from
like
this as far
it's a
as
little
like
slap on the wrist.
yeah,
Like,
it's like
don't
okay,
do
like
that.
don't do that
Yeah.
again. Don't don't like purposely tell your driver to crash to a wall
Yeah. Like
for the next 2 years
for
and
the
you're gonna
next
be fine.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's what the team gets,
Mhm.
which was essentially not a whole lot. Then Flavio Briatore was banned indefinitely from any FIA event and also effectively banned from managing any of the drivers in the sport because the FIA said that super licenses would not be issued or renewed to any driver associated with him in the future.
Okay. So
So
they
they pretty much like
yeah. That's their way of like
blackballed him.
yeah,
Like right.
blacklisted. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, what blacklisted, not black.
Oh, Alex.
I just made up a term. Okay, so then Simmons receives a 5-year ban because he had confessed. Like he at some point
Oh,
during this whole council meeting and stuff, he came out and he said that yes, he was involved. Yes, he did this. He confesses to the whole thing.
that's
And he was very
insane.
regretful of like what they had chosen to do.
Yeah.
But then Flavio Briatore like never was like,
He never
yeah,
like
I did
yeah.
that. Like didn't say anything. Yeah. So um years after all of this goes down,
Okay.
those two, their bans become overturned by a French court
Mhm.
when they both agreed that they would not work in Formula One or FIA sanctioned events for a specified time as part of a later settlement reached with the governing body. Briatore eventually returns to F1 in 2022 recently as an ambassador.
What?
Yes, and then Simmons returned to the sport in 2011 as a technical consultant for Virgin Racing at the time, which is like no longer a team,
Yeah.
obviously. But so both of them, like after years gone went by and whatever, and now this one Flavio Briatore is a ambassador. Like
Oh,
after all of
I
this.
just threw like I committed fraud. Not even fraud. I don't even know. Like created this huge scandal in F1, and
Yeah.
then it's like,
And
oh,
now you're gonna bring him back
as an ambassador of the sport.
as an ambassador. Like an ambassador should be somebody that's like of the highest regard.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is just
Isn't that the
ludicrous.
definition? But
Oh
okay,
gosh.
so for the drivers, Alonso ends up being cleared of any wrongdoing in all of this. And so he pretty much
Play dumb.
like yeah, he was like I had no idea that they did this. And which I'm still like listen, and I'm now a Fernando fan,
Uh huh.
but I'm like he knew what was
Oh
going
yeah.
on.
He's not that dumb.
Because like what we
After
were talking about
winning,
with the fuel loads and
but
stuff,
not
I'm
only that,
like he knew what was going on.
not after winning two championships. You don't win championships being an idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. No, he's super smart.
yeah.
It's very clear.
And maybe he didn't know the
And he keeps his hands clean
yeah.
though. I will one thing about him cuz they did not find any evidence at all and like even in interviewing all these team like the people on the
Yeah.
team, the mechanics and whatever, like everyone agreed he didn't have anything to do with it
But here's my thing on it though.
and he didn't know about it.
He may not have formally known about it, but he had to
Mhm.
think in his head. There's there's got to be a bigger play of why you're making my fuel load this low. Whether he like
Yeah.
knows or says anything in his head, I'm sure it probably crossed his mind of like I don't really totally understand why we're doing this, you know?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it did.
Mhm.
And so I mean, he's really pretty much the main person that like benefits from this whole situation.
Mhm.
Um and in interviews after the fact people obviously were asking him like, "Did you really not know?" like wink wink and
Yeah.
he was like, "No, I really didn't know." And they were like, "Well, cuz he ends up getting to keep his win in this race
Yeah.
even after like they prove that the team cheated and all of that and so people would ask him like do you think it's fair that you get to keep this win and he was like well yeah because I won like he's like you
Ugh.
know races are a long like it's like a long race like yeah like that what happened and what the team did caused me to get to the front but then I had to stay in the front and I didn't make any mistakes and like I finished first which I'm like you can't really argue with that.
He's
Like
not wrong, but
he's
also
making a point.
the only reason why you were in the front was because of that. You know.
Right.
Oh gosh,
Right,
it's
right, right.
hilarious.
So he pretty much untarnished from all of this. He goes on so he was with Renault. Then in 2010, he goes to Ferrari and he's with Ferrari until 2014. And then he goes back to McLaren from 2015 to 2018.
Mhm.
Then he spends his 2 seasons out of F1 and then he returns back to the sport with Alpine, aka Renault, in 2021. So
Mhm.
he moves on. We know what he's doing now, all of that. But, anyways, PK Jr., on the other hand, he basically was like unemployable
Mhm.
in F1 after this. Like, no team wanted anything to do with
Well,
him.
yeah, because he openly
Um,
admitted he helped a team cheat. You know.
right, right, right. So I thought Martin Brundle had a good like quote
Mhm.
about him. So it says he suggested that PK Jr. was now unemployable in Formula One, saying that no team or sponsor would want to be associated with the PK family as a whole. So
Oh.
Brundle noted that PK Jr. didn't deliver at Renault. He wasn't fast enough, and that's why he was released, and that's why he was dropped. That's why he has dropped hand grenades into the system ever since.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
um, he was free to join any team, but again, like
no
nobody
one.
wanted anything to do with him.
Yeah.
It makes me kind of feel bad for him a little bit because I feel like they kind of like pressured him into doing this, and he was a rookie,
But
and
you're
there was probably
also
things flying around of like,
no, but it's
go ahead.
morally like,
Right.
like at some things like
Right.
there's it's one thing to be pushed into doing something you're not totally okay with. It's another thing to be pushed and accept that you are crossing your own moral boundary. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that is a good argument. And then it's like, what are your moral boundaries?
Oh, exactly.
Because clearly
Yeah.
these are not in the limits of, of those.
Exactly.
So nobody wants to hire him in Formula One. So he ends up going to the US and joining NASCAR
Mhm.
for a while. And then he ends up joining Formula E in 2014 whenever that was just starting out. So it was the first season, and he ends up winning that championship that
Mhm.
year. So, and then also, so remember, the team had sued him
Yeah.
for blackmailing and um, libel, all
Yeah.
of that. And so he ends up winning a undisclosed large sum of money after he won a libel case against Renault, and that was in 2010. So they like countersued.
Mhm.
Um, Renault ends up apologizing to both the PKs and paid them substantial damages, which like the amount I couldn't find anywhere, so I don't
Mhm.
think it was disclosed.
Yeah.
Um, but so they admitted and apologized for lying about them, essentially. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Oh
that was
man.
that.
That's a
Yeah.
crazy
So
scandal.
just crazy drama. But like imagine at the time, like with all of this news coming out, because especially when after he like made his initial statements and the FIA said they were investigating stuff, like people were like, what are they investigating? What is going on? And then like the next day it was like something else drops and the
Yeah.
next day and the next day. And so it's like it was just crazy. So I can't even imagine like the drama at the time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Just super, super
Man,
interesting.
I liked this.
But
I
so
was going to say I liked this episode. It was like a good
yeah,
little history lesson for all of us.
I know. Yeah, there's so much different history things. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I found another one that I want to research. So just to give you a little headline, it was the 2005 US Grand Prix,
Mhm.
and only 6 drivers like started the race.
What? That would be fun.
Yeah, and I'm like, what?
Why? Yeah.
So I know I need to research this. But okay, so just real quick to finish this one up, the current day of what's going on with Felipe Massa. So I had mentioned Flavio Briatore became an ambassador
Mhm. Mhm.
to the sport in 2022. So he's now like back in the sport, involved, whatnot. Um, in 2023, like recently,
Mhm.
Bernie Ecclestone said both he and the then FIA president Max Mosley were informed of what happened during the 2008 season,
Mhm.
like while it was still going on. So he says in this interview, they were aware. Actually, Nelson Piquet Sr. had come to them telling them that his son, Piquet Jr., told him what the team made him do. And like he was kind of like regretful of it, like right after it happened. And so he tells his dad. His dad is like, oh my gosh, this is not good. So his dad went and reported this
Mhm.
to the FIA president at the time and, all these people. And so they knew during that
Before,
season
yeah,
what was going on. Yes. But so Bernie Ecclestone in this interview says like even having known that or being told that, they decided not to act on it and not to investigate it further because they didn't want to cause drama.
like
Like they knew that it would be bad for the sport
if
and it was
that
going
was,
to cause a lot of
yeah,
drama and raise a lot of other questions. So they were just did nothing. They did nothing. They turned a blind eye. They were like, we're not going to we're not looking there.
yeah,
So there was also a rule at the time that once a world championship trophy had been handed out
hmm
to whoever won, like there was no challenging
what?
anything that had happened up to that point.
Yeah,
So Hamilton ends up winning the drivers' championship that year.
hmm
He gets handed the trophy at the award ceremony, and they were like, okay, like no one's ever going to open this up.
all done, yeah,
We're done. But now there's been like, they've, since all of that time has passed,
hmm
now you can go back and reverse things even after they've already been done.
yeah,
And then Felipe Massa heard about these comments that were made in this interview
hmm
recently. And so now he's like, we got to investigate this. So he's looking into any kind of avenues that he has to try to overturn the results from this race.
and take his
Because if,
championship.
right, yes,
Ah,
because Massa, like, regardless, like, if you just deleted this race from the results that year, he would have ended up winning
yeah.
the drivers' championship that year because
Ah,
Lewis either got second or third in the race. So the points that he gained from that finish,
yeah.
if you got rid of those at the end of the season, Massa actually would have won the championship by like a point.
Oh, wow. This will be
Yeah. So he's
interesting.
like, I am, yeah. Yeah, so he's been investigating whether he could take legal action to dispute the outcome of the 2008 World Championship.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't know what happens.
Yeah, like to be determined.
To be determined.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's
but yeah,
interesting.
and then Massa never won a driver's championship, so this would have been like
His only one.
his opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if I was him, I would do it.
So,
Like,
yeah, I
what do you
do
have to
not
lose?
blame
Yeah,
him.
nothing.
Right. Yeah, you've already like lost out on the championship. You might as well try to get it, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing to lose in the situation.
Mhm.
But
Exactly.
we'll see.
Well, man,
To be told.
I can't wait
Remains to be
to
seen.
have a follow-up down the road and see what happens with that.
Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
Like that would be crazy though. And so here's my thought, like if they go forward and do that and Lewis like loses his title and they give it to Massa, like I just don't see it happening because at that point it's like how many other things are other people going to come
Yeah.
out of the woodworks and say like, "Well, this happened and then,
I think
in 1970 this happened." And then it's like you're rewriting all of
history.
these results and stuff and
I think
yeah,
there's got to be
I don't know.
without a like any doubt, a shadow of a doubt that
Right.
like you know what I mean? Like there's got to be enough evidence. And I think if there is, they might do it,
Right.
you know? Because if they
Right.
don't, then the FIA is
Yeah.
going to look like to the drivers like they don't care, you know?
Right. Yeah, and
So,
you're just like not going to make things right for people. So,
yeah. Oh,
yep,
that'll
that
be
is the
interesting.
story of Crashgate. Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Scandalous drama. We love
Oh, yeah.
it.
Well, man, this has been a good episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
So that is all we have for you guys today. You can listen to our episodes anywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, with video as well on Spotify, and then also on YouTube. We are at Queens of the Paddock on Instagram and on Twitter.
Yeah, do your little tweets.
And yes, I know. I need to get on our Twitter manager because I think he's been sleeping at the wheel. I can't believe I pay him for this. He's about to get fired. You're being put on notice, Twitter manager,
Yeah,
just so you
FYI.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is all. This has been Queens of the Paddock and F1 podcast. My name is Alex.
And I'm Courtney. And lights out, and away we go.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Race week next week.
Woo
Yes.
woo! You